Get in the van. We're going for another Steelers afternoon drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is not Alan Saunders. That is Derrick Bell, Steelers DB, joining the pod as he typically does on a Friday, but just the two of us. There's a song about that, I think. No Alan Saunders joining us today, DB. How we doing?
I thought you were about to give me some type of Taylor Swift reference that I wasn't privy to be honest with you. Okay.
New album, though, today. Haven't listened to the entire thing. I'm about halfway through. Got to be honest. It's all right, but I hold her to a very high standard, and it's not living up to it, to be honest with you, through 6 songs. So
yeah, you can give me your scouting report on that because I will not be tuning in. So no shade.
What about the daughter? What about the daughter? She's not a Swiftie,
my daughter. She did discover that there was some Taylor Swift thing like on one of the streaming channels. So she's watched that, but she's not really like too big into like music or anything like that now.
So there's no way like Tiff's not then, because otherwise I feel like that explains it then. So. Yeah, because if she was a Swiftie, then there's like no way that your daughter wouldn't be. So
right.
You seemed a little confused when you said I do not have a daughter. There's no, law, at least that I know of.
I thought you were referring to hers, and I'm like, does she have a daughter?
I do not know. I don't believe so. Again, if it's been kept under wraps, they're doing a very good job of it. And I don't know in her life if it's possible to keep anything under wraps. Right. But anyways, I'm sure this is not the conversation that people were expecting to kick off the Steelers afternoon drive. We got a lot of questions this week, DB, and it seems like people took the initiative of the bye week and said, you know what? We got a nice little break here. Let's actually talk about the NFL draft. Let's not even talk about the season, which is fine. We'll get into some draft talk here. That's obviously an area that DB loves and what I would consider an area of expertise for the boy. But I want to first ask you, we're at this quarter point, not officially because 17 games makes it kind of weird. You don't really have a quarter point, but the Steelers are on their bye after 4 games. How would you kind of say things have gone so far? Have they been as expected? Who's been maybe better than expected? Who's been disappointing you? Kind of a quarter point evaluation here.
We talking quarterback specifically, I'm assuming?
No. I'm saying leave the college. We're going to talk about college in a second here. I'm talking about the Steelers.
Okay. You're talking about Steelers.
Quarter point of the season.
Yeah. I think it's kind of been a weird start because a lot of the Steelers games have felt like different. There's familiar themes that we're kind of used to with the Steelers, right? Like they're doing a really good job, winning the turnover battle. They're like they're the least penalized NFL team right now.
They are.
Mm-hmm. So like those are kind of themes on how you can win with this style of play. It almost feels like small ball kind of approach. To me a little bit in a couple of different ways. But yeah, I think that the offense has been probably as expected or probably maybe a little bit better, I think what we maybe anticipated coming in. The defense got off to a little bit of a slow start as a whole, but I think over the past 2 weeks, it's also kind of started to come together a little bit. I think some of the adjustments that they've made on the defensive side of the ball over the last 2 weeks have been promising. And it seems like that they're kind of noticing some of the limitations that a couple of their players have and kind of starting to play to their strengths a little bit more. And that's good coaching. So I think all in all, you have to be really excited about the 3-1 start. It's just about, how much of this stuff is sustainable and what's it going to look like once they face, better competition than what's been on the schedule through the first quarter.
And some of that I feel like is going to come up as we answer some questions here. And I don't want to kind of spoil that by giving any answer to anything that you said there about how I feel, because I know that it's going to come up here in just a minute, because our boy Jody, OG Slim here, said, do you guys think the Steelers have shown that they have the capability to win any type of game, like a defensive rock fight or a shootout? If not, what else do you think they need to show? I feel like for years, we always feel good about their ability in these rock fights. We talk about it all the time for the reasons that you're saying. People call it luck. The Steelers have done it far too often year after year to continue to call what they do defensively, taking the ball away, as luck. It's taught and bought, and they preach it, and then they teach it. So I think that this is just what they do in terms of that. What I will say is, I'm still skeptical about their ability to, if they have to get into a shootout, to score 40-plus points in a game. with their offense. The one thing that has
Mhm.
been super encouraging about the offense that I wanted to mention after you kind of went there was the big difference to me is the red zone offense. Now, they got to obviously get into the red
Yeah.
zone more to cash in with those opportunities. But I really do think, like, even personnel wise, they have the ability because of what they have there for that to be sustainable. Like, I don't think it's some anomaly or outlier that they've been so good in the red zone. I think that that is something that's going to continue. The big question is, how often can they get into the red zone?
Yeah, that was like one of the bigger selling points in my opinion with getting Rodgers. Like Rodgers has been a guy
Mhm.
who's thrown a lot of touchdowns over the course of his career, has usually been pretty good in the red zone area. So I do think that that helps, and also just the Steelers, like especially against the Vikings, like finding and there were some natural answers available to them because of the way that the Vikings, played defense, and maybe we undersold that coming into last week for sure. But just like finding more answers to be more successful in the ground game. I mean, even without Jalen Warren last week, they were able to run the ball at a plus 60% rushing success rate clip. So I would say that's a good question from Jody, because that's kind of like how I always try to think of things too. Is like, as a fan, you want to like you want to be happy and celebrate like the wins and losses, right? But like when
Mhm.
after the game's over with and through the week, I think it's always, at least my perspective, to try to parse out what's gonna really matter when when the playoffs come around, or like when you're facing the good teams. Like,
Yeah.
is this a sustainable model? And I think the
Well,
big question for me is like just the broader overview of, can they do this against better teams? I mean, I don't think they've played like bums through the first 4 weeks of the season, but none of the four teams that they played were actually like predicted to make the postseason. Like if you look at like Vegas odds, they were all sitting around
mhm.
like, 8 wins or something like that. Aside from the Jets, the Jets are kind of a dumpster fire, to be completely honest with you, in a couple
Yeah.
different ways. But what does it look like against better competition? And I would say that the game script that I would be probably more worried about would just be like if they do fall behind and have to play catch up, just because
Mhm.
I mentioned like the small ball approach, like Rodgers, like 5.1 average depth of target would be like a historical outlier. We've just never seen it. Really, like John Ledyard like brought this up on our podcast, but 5.1 yards or average depth of target, I think the lowest in the PFF era, which is 2006, back all the way back to 2006. I think the lowest is like 5.9 from Alex Smith. I mean, we're talking like a full
Yeah.
yard. So
Mhm.
what does that look like if they do have to start pushing the ball down the field a lot and kind of have to play in a negative game script where they're coming from behind? That's, a big question. But we have plenty of time to, get that figured out. I think the good thing is they built themselves a bit of a cushion in the AFC North.
Well, that's why I was going to bring up not just the division, but also like the conference, just how that landscape has changed. Because
Hmm.
whether you feel differently about the Steelers or not, I think you can take a quick glance around and look at what's
You feel
happening
worse
to these
about
other
everyone
teams.
else.
Right. So, like, I'm just wondering how often this is even going to be a question of them being able to compete in a shootout, just because I don't really see teams that are built like that, like outside of Buffalo, and then ton of questions in their secondary. And
Hmm.
I'd say the same thing about Baltimore. When healthy, we know that they can score points, but they've also had a hell of a time playing any type of defense, even when healthy, and now they're super banged up. So, like, those are the games that I could foresee being shootouts. But it's a very select group in the AFC, and I don't think there's going to be many situations where that comes into the question. I think it's more likely for them to have some rock fights, and like I've said, historically, we just feel good about them coming out on the right side of those.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a Steelers fan that is trying to take like the optimistic approach, it's really just what we said coming into the season, right? Like the NFC has the better rosters, the AFC has the better quarterbacks, but now two of
Mhm.
the four best quarterbacks in the AFC are hurt. So that kind of, and like I would even say that even before those things happened, we knew that Cincinnati was going to have problems, that they couldn't score a bunch of points. The Ravens defense has definitely been underwhelming, and they're extremely banged up all across the board as well. So,
Mhm.
and then the Chiefs, that they're going to be in it. The Bills are going to be in it come playoff time. And I think like if you're trying to look at it from from an objective standpoint, it's okay. If you want to make noise in the playoffs, like how can you stack up against those teams? The NFC is different because there's better teams, there's better rosters. That conference is so far ahead of the AFC right now that it's not even funny. So it does open the
Mhm.
door for a team like the Steelers, who maybe have had some flaws coming into the season, but so far, I think you have to feel good about at least where they're at in the landscape, with plenty of time to continually evolve.
and not speaking for anybody else here, but just my personal opinion, also trending in the right direction. I mean, you talked about, the defensive thing. I'm not going to put so much emphasis on this guy's return, but it was completely out of their control that Derrick Harmon missed the first couple of games. And I'm not saying he's the biggest factor as to why things have turned around for the last two, but you insert him into the lineup, and I think that changes a lot of things, not just for himself, but also what he allows other guys to do along that defensive front. I don't think it's a coincidence that we've seen Keanu Benton, or just saw Keanu Benton have his best game as a pro with Derrick Harmon back into the fold.
Yeah, and they're going to get Alex Highsmith back as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's going to definitely be helpful.
Michael kind of bringing up a point here that kind of coincides with it. We were just talking about that defensive front. Michael wants to know, are both the defensive and offensive lines actually improving like it looks like to a casual fan, or is it fool's gold? Best guess on this is the second part, so I guess we can answer that first. But another thing that he said here, best guess on a realistic trade that you could see coming before the deadline. We'll stick to the offensive defensive line, I think, first, and then
you want to start on the offense, or you want to start on defense?
Offense.
Yeah, the offensive line thing is really strange. It's going to be because of the way that the Steelers are focusing the passing game right now, and Rodgers is just kind of like catch and throw underneath. Like it is difficult to get a really clean evaluation of how everybody's looking in pass pro, because they're not dropping back very much, and when they are, it's just kind of like dump offs underneath their quick game. So it's kind of difficult in that regard to kind of gauge them properly. The sample size feels really small. Like Rodgers has the fewest dropbacks in the entire NFL this year, over 2.5 seconds. For context, he has less than half of those dropbacks than Dak Prescott does. So Dak has double the like pure dropback concept. So it's a sliding scale on how you're going to evaluate the offensive line. I would say the run game stuff is really confusing to me, because there is still just, even in last week's game where they ran the ball well against the light boxes and things like that, there is just still so many like busted assignments where guys just don't know where to go.
Do you feel like, though, if you're watching them individually, it doesn't look so bad, but it's like they can't combo block? Like it seems like they don't know how to play together. Like if you're isolating performances, it's not so bad.
But, and these guys, like, this isn't the only new player in the lineup is Troy. And I just don't usually in the first part of the season, when you see offensive lines that maybe don't have the symmetry that you're looking for, it's like, okay, like we've got injuries. The Vikings last week, they're playing 3 backup, linemen across the board. You would kind of expect that from them, but the Steelers have been one of the healthiest teams. Like, I mean, all of their guys have been healthy every week. So it's just weird. And they were really, for the most part this summer. I know Sam Malo doesn't practice a lot, but just I think one of the themes of just like watching the run game is just the amount of blown assignments and just not consistently being able to like double and climb to the second level. Guys not understanding like when they need to come off, being aware of like who they're doubling to. It's just way too many like free runners into the backfield. Like the yards before contact numbers are still not good enough, even though the rushing success rate numbers are definitely trending in the right direction. So I think there's still room for improvement there. But I think that this is still a really young group, and I'm optimistic that, it'll continue to trend in the right direction. I still don't necessarily feel
it's
great about it.
Well, I think that's what I think it's trending in the right direction. It's just that arrow is pointing ever so slightly up, and it's not happening as fast as a lot of people would like.
Yeah.
But I think that they're improved. Sure. I guess the question is going to be, have they improved enough by the end of the year so dramatically where they still feel like it's, and this is going to play into something we talk about later, where they still feel like we feel good about dropping a quarterback behind this offensive line?
Yeah.
Because right now, I think
that's number one priority for me. Yeah. Number one priority for me is like, I want to, like, regardless of wins, losses, do they make the playoffs? Do they win a playoff game? Whatever. Like, number one priority for me is just like, what does this offense look like from the coordinator to the weapons to the offensive line? Like, is this a good enough ecosystem to where we can feel good about dropping a first round quarterback in there and giving him a chance to succeed, with time? So, yeah, I think it's a fair question right now. I think individually, like you said, I mean, I think there's been some really, really, really high level stuff from Favatanu in pass protection. I think that, we'll continue to get a better gauge
I
of
will
that as the
say,
sample size grows.
and I think that he set his own bar with the way that he played last year. A bit underwhelmed by Zach Frazier, I think, in year 2 personally.
It's been a weird start to the season for Zach, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm surprised. I'm actually surprised that people haven't really been talking about that on social media.
Well, because you know what they are. Because here's the thing, and this isn't like to slight any one person, but this is just the realistic nature of how this goes.
Mm-hmm.
We already found the guy to hang that narrative on in Broderick Jones. So like he's the only reason that the offensive line struggled is because of Broderick Jones. And then now, at least I think a lot of people have woken up to Isaac Seumalo hasn't been all that great in his Steelers tenure. But yeah, Zach Frazier very far down the line in terms of anybody that's going to get attention.
Yeah, and it's not like he's been bad. It's just like last year was so good. Where I mean, I think he was either second or third All Pro on like my All Pro ballot that I did. So I mean, yeah, I thought that there were, and the other thing about that is that development, like you talked about earlier with just the general offensive line, development is not always linear. Like there's going to be bumps in the road. There's going to be good weeks, bad weeks for like young players. And I just think like the snap issue is like really weird to me in general, but it is a problem. Now I think like we're 2 years into this to know that it is a problem. And then just like there's been like he's part of like some of the busted assignments in the run game, at least like it looks like in my opinion. And he's definitely part of some of their inability to like pass off stunts. It was better last week for sure. But yeah. So I don't know. I'm definitely not like of the 11 guys on offense, I'm probably least concerned about Frazier like long term. But like if we are like fairly objectively analyzing what we've seen through the first 4 weeks, it has been like a noticeable step down from where it was last year.
How do you feel about the defensive side of the trenches? I just mentioned, finally starting to feel like they're playing at the level that they should be. They got Derrick Harmon back into the fold. We know how excited they were internally about him and how good he looked in training camp, which was why that preseason injury just sucked. But thank goodness it was only a couple of games that he missed. He had him back into the fold, and it looks like it's completely changed the way that they are playing up front. What have you made of the play on the defensive side?
Yeah, I think the play up front is, and this isn't to take anything away from Harmon necessarily, but I think the play up front is more of a change or a tweak in their approach. Like you're just seeing them be so ultra aggressive in terms of like rundown blitzes. They're doing a little bit more like slanting up front. And it's just to make up for some of their personnel. Like if you look at the from the Steelers perspective, I don't think it's a coincidence that, Benton plays his best game in the season last week when they make some of those adjustments, getting really aggressive when the Vikings went like under center. And then also like that kind of has a trickle effect. Like you're seeing Patrick Queen play the best ball that he's played as a Steeler. You're seeing Peyton Wilson have a nice bounce back last week with a full slate of snaps back in his like normal starting role. So I think, the Benton thing is interesting because I think the last week was better for sure. It is maybe a little bit of a caveat that like he was obliterating their backup center. And I think Benton is one of those players that like he's athletic enough and he's like skilled enough to where like he can give just bad players a lot of issues. I'm interested to see like what if he can sustain this and get back on track against like starting caliber players. But yeah, I mean, another good news is though, Hayward's been fantastic. Like I think Tyler asked for like a question in the replies or whatever about like the top 5 Steelers.
That was my guy Jeremy Betts.
Oh, Jeremy, sorry, my bad, Jeremy. Someone asked about that, but there has not been a more consistent like snap to snap player this season than Cam Hayward. Maybe not as high-end reps as we saw last year, but like consistently positive reps. And then he's also been like huge in terms of the splash play element, like getting tip passes and things like that. So Hayward has been fantastic too. And then, Harmon, we kind of expect like the more that we can get him in the lineup, the better things will look. But I do think that he's been pretty solid first 2 games.
We'll answer that in a second from Jeremy then, since you just brought that up in terms of the 5 best Steelers. But the other part of Michael's thing said best guess on a realistic trade. Those are so hard to do. I mean, I could see something similar to last year, trading a day 3 pick for a wide receiver. Hopefully they give you more than Mike Williams did on return. What I'll say,
but do you want them to do that though?
No.
I don't either. I just don't see the point.
That's why,
like,
I think it's completely feasible that they don't do anything. I'm just saying I could see them doing that.
I was just curious.
The other thing that I wanted to add here, I know since the last game till now, not sure exactly when, at some point they reached out to the Raiders again on Jacoby, and we're told they're not trading him, but it was kind of like right now. So if the Raiders continue, I will continue to root against the Vegas Raiders week in and week out until they fall out of contention. Because that is one that I would like to see them make.
Be interested in. Yeah, that would be a move that I'd still be very interested in. I'm with you though. Like, I would probably prefer just to not do the trade a day 3 pick again for 7 games or whatever.
Yeah.
I just don't like, they have enough of those type of players and they're getting by with what they're doing. I think the offensive philosophy too, like with them trying to be like a run heavy team, and I just don't know that there already isn't enough kind of like real passing game volume for the 2 tight ends that they're paying a lot of money. So I'm just not sure that I'm not sure that trading for another guy. Now, if there's like a talented player out there and the price makes sense, and that's fine. Like you said, it's just really difficult to kind of gauge. Like one of the teams that
I think they're trying to get Jacoby for like a 5th.
Yeah, and that's not. I don't know why you would do that, because I mean he would just fetch you more for in a comp pick scenario, or I'm sure they would be outbid for that come the trade deadline, because like the trade deadline, the positions that every team is really like after every single year, it's pass catcher and then edge rusher. Like, can we get a pass catcher and can we get a pass rusher? All these contending teams would be all over the market for that. Those are the 2 positions that you see.
Offensive linemen, but nobody trades them. So like,
yeah, that's the thing. Like, yeah, there's a plethora of pass catchers out there, and then these edge rushers and stuff, you don't really want to get rid of them, but they oftentimes like go for a pretty penny at that point in the season, to where you can get good value if you're out of it. The other like receiver that I think, like, I don't know what, I had to look at his contract, but the Bengals, they're going to be sellers, right? They're dead in the water. Like the team, that team is terrible. Like without Burrow, they're terrible.
I mean,
I'm not saying they would trade him to the Steelers, but would they trade Higgins and just reset this thing? I know he just signed a deal, but there's not a lot of guaranteed money, right? I want to say that there wasn't like a ton of the contract he signed.
Hendrickson
really
certainly. It was.
Yeah, Hendrickson for sure.
I thought he really helped out the team. He did.
Yeah, that deal was weird. Let me see here. Yeah, so like here, so Higgins, right? Like, this is just, I'm looking at it over the cap, so don't take this as like gospel, because I kind of need to look at this a little bit more. But Higgins' contract, it says 2025, a trade post June 1st. Cincinnati would save $20 million on the cap, 3.7 million dead money. So yeah, there's the only like guaranteed money on this thing looks like a roster bonus that's next year.
Why'd he sign this?
I have no idea. Well, I mean, I said that when he signed it. I'm like, that's the weirdest deal of all time. Like, he must have just really been happy to play with Burrow and chase the second fiddle. I'm just saying, like, the contract itself is like very, very tradable. And I wouldn't anticipate, like, I'm not going to give the Bengals enough. I'm not going to give them any credit to like figure things out on what they're doing roster construction wise. But maybe, just maybe, they've had some really tough conversations with themselves. Like, we may need to get an offensive line before we worry about paying a number 2 wide receiver. And considering we're going to be picking high in the draft anyway, because Burrow's not probably coming back until maybe the last couple of weeks of the season, would it be smart for us to try to trade Higgins? Is there a team out there that would give us a second or a third round pick, and we could just, reset the finances of it? I don't know. I mean, I definitely think that Hendrickson probably makes more sense because he's older and he's on a 1-year deal, whereas like you have a cost controlled contract for Higgins that looks pretty good. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if teams called. I don't think they would trade. I don't know if they'd trade it to the Steelers. They would charge a crazy tax, I would imagine.
Yeah, it ain't happening. We got to get a third team involved, have them traded there, and then trade them to Pittsburgh.
Right.
I said today was going to be a lot of college talk, and look at this, we're 25 minutes and it hasn't happened yet. So let's try to do this fast, giving our top 5 Steelers at the quarter point. It's always funny because, like, if you tell me to list 3, I probably have an easy time coming up with 2, and then it's that third one that's tough. If you tell me to list 4, I probably get to 3, and that's the fourth one that gets tough. Listing 5, I have like 6 or 7 names that come to mind immediately, and I'm having a real hard time cutting it to 5.
Yeah.
So Cam Hayward's obviously in there, like you said.
Sure.
TJ, even though obviously, like, we've seen the get off as you've put out there 4 straight years, we've seen a slight dip there. He just has a knack for just being around the ball, and like the splash plays are going to continue to be there in some form or fashion, even if, you know, the pressure rate is down. So I still got to include him. And on the other side of things, it has not been Alex Highsmith a ton. I think Nick Herbig's within the top 5 Steelers so far to start this season. So like there's 3 right off the bat for me. I think DK Metcalf I have to include on the offensive side just because of the explosive plays he brings to this offense in such a different fashion. Like, he's such a unique player to me in that when you think of explosive plays, you're thinking, you know, throwing the football down the field, launching it, and creating them that way. He's at his best when he converts from wide receiver to running back and creates after the catch. And I don't think this offense would be able to be built to create explosives in the pass game if it wasn't for having his specific skill set within it. So I got to include him. So I'm at 4. Oh, man. And I think just because of the massive jump that we've seen for the red zone offense, I'll include Aaron.
Interesting. Yeah. I
know I left somebody out that you're gonna have, and I'm gonna be like, yeah, I don't know how I left that guy.
No, I think the first couple. I mean, Cam and TJ are probably always going to be on this list until they retire, and I don't necessarily think.
You know what? No, I can already think of one I should have had on there. Patrick Queen's playing fantastic right now.
Yeah, Queen has to be there in my opinion. So I would say Cam, TJ, and no, I'm not going to give an order. Cam, TJ would be 2 of mine. Queen would be another. Patrick Queen, in terms of like run stops at the linebacker position, he's already got 10 for this season. That is 6th in the NFL. And like some of the guys he's behind are like only players that can stop the run, not necessarily like guys that play all 3 downs and don't give you much in the blitz or the coverage department. So Queen is definitely up there in my opinion. It's weird because the defense has like as a whole underachieved, mainly just because they got off to such a slow start. So it's weird that I would include like 4 defensive players and only like 1 offensive player. But I think you've got to acknowledge what Nick Herbig is doing, like in relief. And I actually was tweeting this out before we jumped on here because I was just like curious on like what his production looks like when he gets like a bunch of playing time. So Herbig, these stats are like unbelievable. Herbig has started 7 games as a Steeler. He has 5 sacks, 13 quarterback hits, 4 forced fumbles, and 4 tackles for loss.
Wait, hold on. So he has had 7 starts.
He's set 7 starts. He's got 5 sacks, 13 quarterback hits, 4 forced fumbles.
So yeah, that's like he's like a 12 sacks over a 17 game season.
Man, who's been saying that for 2 years now?
Yeah.
I think that type of production from a guy who like isn't even like a starter on your like depth chart is pretty insane. So Herbig would be there for me, not just because of the splash. I mean, the splash play element is definitely there with him, but it's just the high quality reps that he gives you, and like the pressure rate looks good and all that stuff. The last one is weird for me because I would have given. I kind of want to like maybe do a cop out and tie this last spot.
Oh, this guy.
Yeah, okay. Which is really soft on my part. I would have said Jaylen Warren easily going into last week before the DK like breakout game. Jaylen to me is like playing at a level that I don't know that we've really seen him play at in this type of capacity where he's like touching the ball this much. And just like I think he's done a really nice job creating for himself. And I think the vision has been the best it's ever been this year. And then like what you said with the DK thing, like last week, he went from, the worst numbers of his career to start the year. And then last week has that breakout game. But the one thing that has been consistent is his ability to like make explosive plays happen like after the catch. When they traded for DK, it was like, okay, like, is there more to him than just like running fades down the sideline and then, slants over the middle or anything like that? But them getting him the ball and letting him work after the catch has like been one of the best things for this offense. You could say the same thing about those checkdowns to Jalen. So those two guys would kind of be right up there for 5. If I had to give like a specific 5, I'd probably still give the nod a little bit to Jalen because I think he's been a little bit more consistent game to game. But the DK game from this past Sunday against Minnesota, I mean, he was phenomenal, and that's the type of play that they really need for this offense to go to the next level. If he can bring that on a semi-consistent basis.
The one name that we didn't bring up that Jeremy had on his was Darnell Washington, and I think the X factor obviously that he provides in the run game, like it's hard for a lot of people to quantify how impactful and important that is. But I mean, he changes everything, and also cap tip to Spencer Anderson, the work he did with getting the run game going on Sunday as well. We're going well over 30 minutes because we got to answer this one question because actually I had like 2 people respond to this and said I wanted to ask the same thing. So Butch here said, I completely forgot about Juwan Bentley signed to the practice squad. Do we think that we'll see him at some point? My answer is yes, because of injury, unfortunately. Like those are just things that happen. So assuming he doesn't sign elsewhere, I think at some point you're going to need him to come up. I also think that he's probably a bit matchup specific. So like this is a guy, if you're playing Baltimore with Lamar Jackson, maybe you do want him up here. If you're playing Cleveland, you probably do want him up here. So I think that there's maybe some matchup specifics like that he could figure into, but like as long as they stay healthy with the linebacker rotation right now, I think they're comfortable with. The unfortunate reality is at some points they're probably gonna need another body called up.
Yeah, do we know how long Malik Harrison is out for? He's on IR.
No, seem pretty significant. I don't think it was season ending, but
Gotcha.
Maybe the halfway point would be somewhere to circle.
Yeah. I mean, the Bentley thing, I wrote about Bentley for the site. I think it was a little over a week ago. So a lot of thoughts kind of there. I went through like his tape. But yeah, I kind of agree with what you're saying. Like he's a downhill thumper type that gives them a different archetype of player than what they've kind of got on the roster. He's just different from all the guys on the active. But I mean, best case scenario is that Peyton Wilson plays the way he did last week. I think the Steelers kind of sent a message to Peyton after that week 2 performance that like we got to get things straightened out, and started giving some of his snaps to Cole Holcomb. And then last week you saw him kind of earn those snaps back. The Steelers are making it very clear by their deployment and their like distribution of labor that they want Peyton Wilson to be the number 2 linebacker. Like they don't want to take him off the field. And if he does play anywhere close to like his potential, they're not going to do that. They don't really necessarily want to mix and match. It's going to be Queen and they want a partner for him. So best case scenario is that Peyton Wilson like plays really well down the stretch, and they don't need Bentley or even Harrison as much when they come back. But it is good. I do think that they have good depth, even with Harrison on IR, and Bentley I still think can play, especially early downs. Like he can be a thumper for you and like attack the line of scrimmage. And then Cole Holcomb he's been fine like when he's been out there on the field. So go look around some of the other defenses around the NFL. I mean, especially like teams like Dallas.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's why I even question if Bentley's going to be here when they would need him.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I mean, like I don't like if you're Dallas and you're not you don't necessarily stop the run at a high level anyway, and you've got all these like linebackers that aren't really linebackers on the field. I don't know why you wouldn't just go poach Bentley and put him in there, and at least he'll give you something in terms of being a plugger. But yeah, it's a good problem to have, like with this much experience in the linebacker, because it's not like you're doing any sort of projecting. We've seen, Holcomb's had a really injury-filled career, but like he's been a starter at different points in his career. Bentley's been a long-term starter, and then now you've got Wilson and Queen who are in their second year working together. So it's a lot of experience, up the spine for sure.
All right, and then what I thought potentially would be the leading topic on here turned into more of an afterthought, but we're going to get some of this real quickly for you guys. I want to get DB's thoughts. I know he's working on an article right now, but you take a look at the college football landscape right now, and we had a conversation before this. I watch college ball when it's happening live, but I'm not the type of guy at this juncture that's going back and watching it. I save that for, February, March. This year I won't be buying a house in those months, so I'll actually be able to enjoy leading up to the draft, or at least I don't foresee that happening. So I haven't paid a ton of attention post live watch. Who's trending up right now for you at the quarterback position? People want to know. And out of those guys, are there guys that you feel like need to even extra little check mark by them because they're such a good fit for the offense?
Yeah, I think the quarterback class has been interesting because it's definitely been different than what I think the consensus thought it was going to be. Like consensus coming into the year, there was a lot of love for guys like Drew Aller, Kate Klubnik, Garrett Nussmeier, and even like Arch Manning. Arch Manning, I think, was probably in that conversation.
We're taking it on the chin with Klubnik. We're taking it on the chin and the Kate Klubnik.
Yeah, oh boy, it has been. So those type of names, it's been kind of rough for like some of those guys. We have gotten a couple like pleasant surprises, like the emergence of Dante Moore for Oregon, which I wrote about for the site a couple weeks ago. And like he had that really special kind of end to the game last week in a really tough environment on the road. Penn State whiteout,
like double the people that he'll have in any NFL stadium, pretty much.
Right? Yeah. really impressive stuff. Moore's tape has been really clean this year, and then so I'm excited about him. And then like another guy that kind of has like come out of nowhere. I mean, Moore was a 5-star player, like he was an Elite 11 guy, so like it's hard to call him like a out of nowhere guy. It's just,
but nobody knew him in 24. Nobody was talking about him.
Yeah, because he was backing up Dylan Gabriel after transferring from UCLA. But another guy that has like kind of came out of nowhere is Ty Simpson. Like has backed up. He was backing up Jalen Milroe, and he's been at Alabama for several years now. It's just like he hasn't really gotten the opportunity to play. And then this year he's been lights. I mean, he's been unbelievable. So if you're looking at guys that maybe have like kind of approached on the scene,
so do you think there's been maybe the same amount of guys that have played at a high level, just different guys than we've thought?
Yeah, I just think like coming into the season, when I went and watched, I think it was 9 quarterbacks this summer, which is definitely more than I typically do. I really only watched that many because I knew that the Steelers were going to be taking one, and I wanted to kind of have some type of baseline knowledge of a lot of these guys. Like coming into the season, like we were doing like summer scouting is all about like projecting out. Like so many of these guys are like 1-year starters. Like even guys that I liked coming out of summer scouting, like Fernando Mendoza was like my QB1 coming out of summer scouting, and then Lenora Sellers was my QB2. Like those guys, which I think have kind of like held steady so far this season. Mendoza's been good. I think Sellers has done some good things too. But you're doing a lot of projecting because they've only played a limited amount of snaps. Like it wasn't. I mean, last year was like this too, but it wasn't like the. I guess what was it, the Caleb Williams and Drake May thing, where it was like these guys are bona fide top 5 picks no matter what happens, and like they were like that throughout the entire year, no matter what, just because we were already kind of at that point. This summer, it was really like, okay, like these guys could be first rounders, but we have to kind of see what it looks like. I think a lot of the consensus top guys have kind of fallen off, and we've gotten some really encouraging surprises. So like what you're saying, it may actually end up being like the same amount of players that you'll feel decent about taking early in the draft. Just a matter of like, the Steelers being able to trade up and get one of these guys that they really like. But it'll be, the other thing is like, it's still early. It's only 5 weeks in, so we got a lot of ball left to play, especially as the schedules get a lot tighter for a lot of these guys. So I don't know if I'm feeling overly optimistic or pessimistic. I think I feel okay about it. Overall.
It stinks we're not seeing John Mateer, his injury, so he's gonna miss some time. Should be back this season. He's played at a pretty high level, at least. Again, don't know how you feel live watching. He's definitely taking.
I will have thoughts on Mateer in my article tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay, there you go. Working with somebody that Cam Ward gave a ton of credit when he started to ascend as a player. my guy LBJ on Twitter, through Taylon Green my way at Arkansas as well. So I don't know. It's gonna be fun to go through the season and just see how things change from now until April. Tyler Hernley, been with the pod for a long time, rocking with us. Started to ask about quarterback and then replied to himself and said, "Okay, I see a ton of people already talking about quarterback. What are your thoughts on receiver? Assuming that they're going to go quarterback early and may even have to use a second round pick to move up for that quarterback. Is there a guy like, maybe later on day 2 potentially that you see for the receivers? Or I guess you can just talk about the draft class as a whole at receiver."
Yeah, the receiver class I thought coming out of summer was pretty underwhelming. There was 2 guys that I was really kind of infatuated with, and it was Jordan Tyson, which I think he was the consensus number 1 guy. But I really like Tyson's game a lot. I think he's an absolute stud. The other guy that I was like really, really high on was Mekhi Lemon. He was like a top 10 player that I watched in the summer, and I think his stock is kind of starting to rise to that level. I think he's been fantastic. Last time I checked, I think Lemon was averaging like over 4 yards per route run or something insane like that. He's been unbelievable to start the season. So those 2 guys are probably like your first round pick guys. I think Carnell Tate has shown some good things really since like the opener. There's been a little bit more like added nuance to his game. Some of the other guys that I would keep an eye out for, Chris Brazzell, from transfer from Tulane, from Tennessee. Yeah. He has been off to a like scorching hot start. My buddy Nick Martin and I are going to discuss Brazzell a little bit next week. And then
seems like every play is an explosive.
Yeah, and then Chris Bell from Louisville. There is, some similarities to a guy, at least from a build perspective, to a guy that used to play for Arthur Smith in Tennessee. But a lot of big playability with him for sure.
I wonder how much of a look the Steelers have gotten at Jordan Tyson indirectly, just because it seems like Andy Weidl's been around Sam Levitt as much as possible. Name that you didn't mention when talking about quarterback, but I would certainly keep on your radar as Steelers fans with how much it looks like they've been around him.
Yeah, Tyson's been, honestly, Tyson is one of those guys, when you scout wide receivers, there's always a couple guys in each class, depending on like the quarterbacks that they play with or the offensive infrastructures that they're operating within, that are going to be better pros than they are for the college game. Tyson will be one of those players. He's been an unbelievably productive college player. I just think he's going to be a better pro player because the pros is a lot more like timing based. And there's honestly, like, if you actually watch the film, Tyson's open like almost every play. Like it's really unbelievable how dominant he's been. So yeah, Tyson. I think Tyson and Lemon, there's certain positions that I haven't necessarily been able to get to, but I would not be surprised if both those guys are like top 10 on my big board once we get to, April.
All right. We got, Alan said if we go past 45 minutes, I have to start paying him. So we got to get out of here.
Nice.
And go enjoy our weekends, and hope you guys do the same. But before we do so, DB, tell the people where they can find you.
Yep, at Steelers_DB on Twitter and YouTube. You can find all my written work at SteelersNow.com. Like I said, tomorrow morning-ish, hopefully going to be finalizing and publishing my article. It's just going to be like a general stock watch on the entire quarterback class. It's really what I've spent the past 3-4 days doing, just going back, watching the film of as many guys as I could possibly get to. Just not necessarily like a rankings list, but more about just like how my opinions of some of these guys have changed really since the summer. Are they exceeding expectations, hold and serve, or kind of been disappointing, and the reasons for all of that stuff. So excited for you guys to read that. I'm really happy with how this has turned out so far.
There we go. You guys are asking about college stuff a lot, which we love. Like I said, DB's so good at it. And brings a lot to the site in that regard. So stay on the lookout for that tomorrow. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell here on YouTube. Keep adding to that growing number that currently sits at 16,800. And we just talked about him, friend of DB's channel, Patrick Queen, 6 on the end there. If you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, be sure to us a 5-star review and subscribe over there. You can also drop questions over there, and we'll get to them as well. And then you find me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH. For Derrick Bell, myself, thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.